I never thought that at 38 years old, I'd be sitting at the kitchen table at 2 a.m., frantically writing down the events of the day in a notebook like some kind of paranoid. But here I am, and the pen in my hand is shaking as I try to make sense of what's happening. It all started 3 months ago when my mother-in-law, Veronica, moved in with us after my father-in-law's death. Alice, my wife, insisted on it, and I couldn't refuse. After all, Veronica had just lost her husband of 40 years. "It won't be for long, Jack," Alice said then. "She just needs time to get back on her feet." I nodded, not suspecting that this, "not for long," would turn our lives upside down. The first few weeks were fine. Veronica was quiet, kept to herself, spent a lot of time in her room. Our children, 12-year-old Mike and 9-year-old Lisa, tried not to bother their grandmother. But gradually, something began to change. I couldn't say exactly what, but the atmosphere in the house became tense. It started with little things. For example, one morning I came down to the kitchen and heard Veronica saying to Alice, "Dear, are you sure Jack earns enough? I've noticed you're wearing the same dress for the third time this week." Alice laughed and said something like, "Mom, everything's fine. I just like this dress." But I noticed how after this conversation, Alice started looking at price tags in stores more often. Then, there were comments about the children. "Mike, sweetie, why don't you do sports like other boys? Your father was already playing football at your age." I never played football, and Mike knew this perfectly well. But I saw how he became embarrassed and started doubting himself. And then, there was the situation with Alice's brother Tom and his fiancée Sarah. They came over for dinner, and Veronica casually remarked, "Tom, dear, are you sure Sarah is the one? You know how important it is to find a woman who will be a good housewife. And Sarah seems more interested in her career." Tom frowned, and Sarah looked as if she'd been slapped. The whole evening after that was tense. I started noticing these little comments, these innocent remarks. They were like drops of poison, slowly poisoning our family. But when I tried to talk to Alice about it, she just laughed. "Jack, you're exaggerating. Mom is just looking out for us. She's always been straightforward, you know." Yes, I knew. But this was something different. Something more purposeful. And now here I am, writing down every word, every look, every gesture. Because I feel this is just the beginning. Veronica is weaving some complex web, and we've all been caught in it. I look at the clock. 3:15 a.m. In a few hours, a new day will begin, and I know it will bring new intrigues, new manipulations. But I'll be ready. I'll be watching. And I'll find a way to break this web before it strangles our family. I close the notebook and put it in the desk drawer. Tomorrow will be a new day. And a new battle. A week has passed since I started keeping my secret diary. Each day brought new observations, new reasons for concern. Today is Saturday, and we're preparing for a family barbecue. I know this will be another opportunity for Veronica to weave her intrigues. "Jack, honey, could you help me with the salad?" Alice's voice pulled me out of my thoughts. "Sure, dear," I replied, approaching the kitchen table. Alice looked tense. The last few days, she had been somewhat distant, as if something was bothering her. "Is everything all right?" I asked, starting to cut the tomatoes. She sighed. "Yes, it's just. Mom said something yesterday, and I can't stop thinking about it." There it was. I became alert, trying to maintain a calm appearance. "What exactly?" "She asked if I was sure that you were faithful to me." The knife in my hand froze. I felt the blood drain from my face. "What? Why did she say that?" Alice shrugged, not looking at me. "She said she noticed how you look at the neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, and that you often stay late at work." I couldn't believe my ears. Mrs. Johnson was over 60, and my late nights at work were related to a big project that Alice knew perfectly well about. "Alice, you don't believe this, do you?" I tried to speak calmly, but inside I was boiling. She finally looked at me. "Of course not. But why did she say it? Why would she make up such a thing?" I opened my mouth to answer, but at that moment Veronica entered the kitchen. Oh, you're already preparing the salad? How nice! She smiled her trademark smile. Alice, dear, could you help me with something upstairs? Alice nodded and left the kitchen. I was left alone with Veronica. Jack, you look tense, she said, coming closer. Is everything all right? I clenched my fists under the table. Why did you tell Alice I might be cheating on her? Veronica feigned surprise. Oh, Jack, I just expressed concern. You know how I worry about my daughter. And besides, isn't it good for her to be a little more vigilant? In these times, one needs to be careful. I didn't know what to say. Her logic was twisted, but there was something convincing about it. If I didn't know better, I might have believed she really cared about Alice's well-being. Veronica patted me on the shoulder. Don't worry so much. I'm sure everything is fine between you and Alice. Just be more attentive to her, okay? With these words, she left the kitchen, leaving me in complete confusion. The barbecue started an hour later. Tom and Sarah were among the first to arrive. I immediately noticed the tension between them. Tom looked gloomy, and Sarah looked upset. Hey, is everything okay? I asked Tom when we were alone by the grill. He sighed. No, not really. Sarah and I had a fight yesterday about this damn job in Chicago. I knew Sarah had been offered a promotion that required moving to Chicago. It was a great opportunity for her career. And what? You don't want to move? Tom shook his head. It's not that. It's just, your mother-in-law said something the other day. That as Sarah is so focused on her career, how will she take care of the family? And I started thinking, maybe she's right? I felt everything inside me tighten. There was another thread in Veronica's whip. Tom, listen, I began, but then Veronica approached us. Boys, how's the meat coming along? Tom, dear, you look upset. Is everything okay with Sarah? Tom forced a smile. Yes, everything's fine, Veronica. Just some minor disagreements. Oh dear, I'm so worried about you. You know, maybe you should think about postponing the wedding? Give yourselves time to think? I saw Tom's eyes widen in surprise. Postpone the wedding? But Veronica, the meat is ready, I interrupted, trying to steer the conversation in another direction. Maybe we should call everyone to the table? Veronica smiled at me. Of course, Jack. How thoughtful of you. When she walked away, Tom turned to me. Do you think she's right? Maybe we should think about it. I put my hand on his shoulder. Tom, listen to me. You and Sarah love each other. Don't let anyone interfere in your relationship. Talk to her, discuss everything together. Tom nodded, but I saw doubt in his eyes. The dinner passed in a tense atmosphere. I watched as Veronica skillfully directed the conversation, dropping little comments here and there that seemed innocent, but actually hit right on target. When everyone left, I sat in the backyard, looking at the stars and trying to make sense of everything that had happened. How could one woman create so many problems? And most importantly, why? I took out my notebook and started writing down the events of the day. I knew this was just the beginning. Veronica was weaving her web, and I had to find a way to break it before it destroyed our family. But how could I do this without ruining my relationship with Alice? How to prove that her mother is a manipulator when each of her actions can be explained by care for the family? I closed the notebook and sighed. Tomorrow would be a new day, and a new battle in this invisible war. A month has passed since that ill-fated barbecue. During this time, the situation in the family only worsened. I felt like I was in a minefield, where every step could lead to an explosion. Today is Sunday, and we'd gathered for a family dinner. I'm sitting at the table, watching Veronica, who, like an orchestra conductor, is managing the conversation. Mike, dear, she addresses my son. How are things at school? I heard you're having problems with math. Mike tenses up. Not really problems, just a bit difficult. Oh, don't worry. Veronica smiles. Not everyone can be good at exact sciences. Take your father, for example. I interrupt her. Actually, I always did well in math. Veronica pretends to be surprised. Really? I thought, well, I must have mixed something up. I see Alice giving me a strange look. Could she have believed this lie? The conversation switches to Lisa. Veronica asks about her friends, and I notice my daughter starting to talk about her best friend Emily. "Oh, Emily," says Veronica. "Is that the girl who lives in the big house on the corner? I heard her parents recently divorced. Poor thing, it must be very hard for her now." Lisa looks shocked. "What? No, Emily's parents aren't divorcing." Veronica feigns confusion. "Oh, I'm sorry, darling. I must have mixed something up. You know, at my age, you sometimes forget details." But the seed of doubt has already been planted. I see Lisa frowning, clearly thinking about her grandmother's words. After dinner, I help Alice with the dishes. She's quiet, and I feel tension between us. "Is everything okay?" I ask. Alice sighs. "I don't know, Jack. It's just, Mom said something to me the other day, and I can't stop thinking about it." My heart clenches. "What exactly?" "She said she saw you talking to some woman near the office, and that you looked close." I feel anger rising inside me. "Alice, that was Sarah from the marketing department. We were discussing a project. Your mother misunderstood everything." Alice looks at me with doubt. "I know, but why does she constantly notice such things? Maybe she knows something?" I can't take it anymore. "Alice, listen to me. Your mother is manipulating all of us. She's constantly dropping these little doubts, these half-truths. Don't you notice?" Alice steps back, her eyes widening in surprise and anger. "What are you saying?" "This is my mother, Jack. She's just looking out for us." "No, Alice, this isn't care. This is manipulation. Look at what's happening with Tom and Sarah, with the children." "Stop it!" Alice raises her voice. "I can't believe you're accusing my mother of such things. What's happening to you, Jack?" At this moment, Veronica enters the kitchen. "Is everything all right?" I heard loud voices. Alice wipes away tears. "Nothing, Mom. Just a small misunderstanding." Veronica hugs her daughter. "Oh dear. You know, relationships are complicated. Sometimes people change, and not always for the better." I see Alice nodding, and I feel the ground slipping from under my feet. Veronica looked at me with an expression that could have been taken for sympathy if I didn't know better. In the evening, when everyone has gone to bed, I sit in my study, reviewing the notes in my notebook. Each page is a new thread in the web of lies that Veronica is weaving. But how can I prove this? How to open Alice's eyes, and everyone else's? I hear footsteps behind the door, and quickly hide the notebook. The door opens, and Alice enters. "Jack, we need to talk," she says seriously. I nod, feeling that this conversation could change everything. Veronica's web is tightening, and I don't know if I can break free from it without losing my family in the process. Alice sat opposite me, her face serious and tense. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. "Jack," she began, "I think we need help. Professional help." I blinked in surprise. "You mean a family therapist?" She nodded. "Yes," Mom suggested. I couldn't hold back a groan. "Of course, your mother suggested." Alice frowned. "This is exactly what I'm talking about, Jack. Your attitude towards my mom, it's changed. You become suspicious, irritable. I don't recognize you." I took a deep breath, realizing this might be my only chance to open Alice's eyes. "Okay, let's go to a therapist. But on one condition, we go to one I choose, not your mother." Alice hesitated for a second, but then agreed. "All right. If it will help us figure things out, I agree." The following week, we went to our first session with Dr. Anderson, an experienced family therapist recommended by a colleague. I hoped that a professional would be able to see what Alice couldn't. During the session, I shared my observations about how Veronica was manipulating all of us. Alice listened with disbelief and indignation. "This is absurd," she exclaimed. "My mother is just looking out for us." Dr. Anderson calmly listened to both of us, asking clarifying questions. At the end of the session, he suggested, "Perhaps we should invite your mother to one of our meetings? It will help us better understand the family dynamics." I tensed but agreed. This could be a chance to expose Veronica. When we returned home, Veronica was waiting for us in the living room. "How was your meeting, dears?" she asked with a smile. Alice told her about Dr. Anderson's suggestion. I watched Veronica's reaction closely. For a second, something like panic flashed in her eyes, but she quickly composed herself. "Oh, that's a wonderful idea. I'd be happy to join you," she said, but I noticed her fingers nervously gripping the armchair. The next day, I decided to act. I knew Veronica often used Alice's computer to check her email. While everyone was busy, I installed a program that recorded all actions on the computer. A few days later, when Alice was at work and Veronica had gone shopping, I checked the records. What I saw shocked me. Veronica wasn't just checking her email. She was reading Alice's personal correspondence, sending emails in her name, deleting messages. I saw an email to Tom, supposedly from Alice, expressing concern about his relationship with Sarah. I quickly made copies of all the evidence. Now I had what I needed to expose Veronica. But as I was about to turn off the computer, I heard the sound of the front door opening. Veronica had returned earlier than I expected. "Jack? What are you doing on Alice's computer?" Her voice was full of suspicion. I turned around, feeling adrenaline pulsing through my veins. This was the moment of truth. "Veronica, the game is over. I know everything you've been doing." Her face changed. The mask of the caring mother-in-law fell away, revealing cold calculation. "You won't be able to prove anything," she hissed. "No one will believe you." At that moment, I heard another voice. Alice had come home early. "Mom? Jack? What's going on?" I looked at Veronica, then at Alice, who had just entered the room. I knew the next few minutes would determine the future of our family. "Alice, we need to talk. Right now." The tension in the room could be cut with a knife. Alice looked from me to her mother, clearly not understanding what was happening. "What do we need to talk about, Jack?" she asked warily. I took a deep breath, realizing that what I was about to say could forever change our lives. "Alice, your mother has been reading your personal emails. She's been sending messages in your name, deleting emails. She's been manipulating all of us." Alice's face went pale. "What? No, that's impossible. Mom would never." "Alice, sweetie," Veronica interjected, her voice trembling with righteous indignation. "Don't listen to him. Jack is clearly not himself. Perhaps stress at work." I didn't let her finish. "I have evidence. I installed a program that records all actions on the computer. Here, look for yourself." I turned the computer screen towards Alice, showing her the records of Veronica's actions. Alice slowly approached the computer, her eyes widening as she saw the evidence. "Mom, is this true?" Veronica was speechless for a moment, but quickly regained her composure. "Darling, you're not going to believe this, are you? Jack clearly fabricated these records. He's trying to turn you against me." I felt anger rising within me. "Alice, think for yourself. Remember all the strange situations, all the conflicts that started after your mother arrived. It's not a coincidence." Alice looked confused and frightened. I don't know what to think." "Mom, why would you read my emails?" Veronica approached her daughter, trying to hug her, but Alice stepped back. "Sweetie, I was just worried about you. I wanted to make sure you were okay." "By reading my private correspondence? Sending messages in my name?" Alice's voice was shaking. I decided it was time to reveal everything. "Alice, your mother sent an email to Tom from your account, expressing concern about his relationship with Sarah. She was trying to break up their engagement." Alice gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. No, this can't be true." Veronica suddenly changed tactics. Her face hardened, and her voice became cold. "You don't understand, Alice. I did all this for you, for our family. Jack isn't worthy of you. And Sarah, she'll take Tom far away from us. I couldn't let that happen." I couldn't believe my ears. Veronica had finally shown her true face. Alice stepped back, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Mom, how could you? You lied to me, manipulated me, all of us." At that moment, our children ran into the room, attracted by the noise. "Mom? Dad? What's going on? Mike asked, looking at the crying Alice. Veronica tried to take advantage of the situation. Children, your father has upset your mother. He's saying terrible things about me. But Lisa, our perceptive girl, looked at her grandmother suspiciously. Grandma, did you tell me that Emily's parents were getting divorced? That wasn't true, was it? Veronica fell silent, not knowing what to say. I felt something inside me break. All these months of tension, suspicion, struggle. I sat down in a chair, feeling drained. Alice approached me, her eyes full of pain and remorse. Jack, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I took her hand, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. Alice, I love you. I've always loved you and our family. I just wanted to protect us. Veronica stood in the corner of the room, her mask completely fallen. Now she looked old and lost. What do we do now? Alice whispered. I looked at our children, at Alice, even at Veronica. Despite everything that had happened, this was our family. Broken, wounded, but still a family. We'll deal with this together, I said. Step by step. But the first thing we need to do is call Tom and Sarah. They need to know the truth. Alice nodded, wiping away tears. Mike and Lisa came over to us, and we hugged, feeling the beginning of a long and difficult healing process. Veronica silently watched us, and I saw a mixture of anger, fear, and maybe regret in her eyes. I knew we had a long way to go to sort all this out. But right now, at this moment, I felt relief. The truth had finally come out. The next few days passed as if in a fog. Alice and I decided that Veronica should temporarily move to the guest house in the garden, close enough for us to keep an eye on her, but far enough to give our family space to recover. On Sunday, we called a family council. Tom and Sarah arrived early in the morning, their faces tense and worried after our brief phone conversation. We sat in the living room, the tension almost palpable. Alice started the conversation. Tom, Sarah, we need to tell you something important. It's about Mom and everything that's been happening in the last few months. I saw Tom tense up. What happened? Is Mom okay? Alice took a deep breath and started explaining. About Veronica's manipulations, about the email sent in her name, about the attempt to ruin Tom and Sarah's relationship. With each word, our relatives' faces became more and more shocked. No, it's impossible, Tom mumbled, but I saw doubt in his eyes. Sarah was silent, her eyes wide open. Suddenly she stood up. Those comments about my career, hints that I wouldn't be a good wife, was it all part of her plan? I nodded. Unfortunately, yes. Veronica was trying to create a rift between you. Tom looked lost. But why? Why would Mom do all this? Alice shook her head. We're not sure. Maybe she was afraid of being alone after Dad died. Maybe she was trying to control our lives because of her own fears and insecurities. At that moment, the living room door opened, and Veronica entered. Everyone fell silent, looking at her. I heard your conversation, she said quietly. And I think it's time for me to explain myself. We waited silently as Veronica gathered her thoughts. When your father died, she began, looking at Alice and Tom. I felt like I was losing control of my life. You were both so successful, so independent. I was afraid you wouldn't need me anymore. Her voice trembled, but she continued. I started small little comments, small manipulations. I told myself I was doing it for your own good. But the truth is, I was doing it for myself. To feel needed important. Tom shook his head. Mom, we always needed you. But not like this. Not through lies and manipulations. Veronica lowered her eyes. I know. I got lost. And the more I manipulated, the harder it became to stop. I saw how I was ruining your relationships, but I couldn't stop. Sarah stood up, her eyes burning with anger. You almost ruined Tom's and my engagement. You made me doubt myself, my career. Veronica nodded. I know. And I'm so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. Or ever. But I want you to know the truth. Alice stood up and approached her mother. Mom, What you did, it's serious. You violated our trust. You hurt all of us. We need time to deal with all of this. Veronica nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. I'm ready to do whatever it takes to fix this. If you'll let me. I watched this scene, feeling a mix of emotions. Relief that the truth was finally out. Anger for everything we had to go through. And a strange sympathy for this broken woman standing before us. Tom took a deep breath. We can't just forget all this, Mom. But maybe we can try to start over. With honesty and openness. Alice nodded. I agree. But we all need help. Professional help. Veronica looked up, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. You'll give me a chance? I looked at my family. At Alice, my beloved wife, who was so hurt, but still found the strength for forgiveness. At Tom and Sarah, who were holding hands, supporting each other. At our children, who were watching all this with wisdom beyond their years. Yes, I said, surprising myself. We'll give you a chance, Veronica. But only one. And it won't be easy. Veronica nodded, her face a mixture of gratitude and remorse. We all understood that this was just the beginning of a long road to recovery. But at this moment, for the first time in many months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe we would come out of this crisis stronger. Maybe we could build something new on the ruins of what had been destroyed. Only time will tell. But now, looking at my family, I was ready for this journey. No matter how difficult the next steps would be, we would take them together. 6 months have passed since the day we uncovered the truth about Veronica's manipulations. These months have been filled with hard work, painful conversations, and a slow but steady healing process. Today, we've gathered again as a family for a barbecue in our garden. But the atmosphere is completely different from that fateful day 6 months ago. I stand by the grill, flipping burgers, and observe my family. Alice is laughing at something Tom said. Sarah, now 6 months pregnant, gently rubs her belly. Mike and Lisa are playing badminton, their cheerful laughter echoing through the garden. And Veronica, she sits in a chair, watching everyone with a quiet smile. She looks older than she did 6 months ago, but at the same time more real. Need any help? Alice approaches me, wrapping her arms around my waist. I smile at her. No, I've got it. How are you? She thinks for a moment. I feel good. Really good. For the first time in a long time. I nod, understanding that I feel the same way. The last 6 months haven't been easy. We've all been going to family therapy, both together and separately. There were moments when it seemed we wouldn't be able to overcome this. But we did. Veronica underwent an extensive course of individual therapy. She worked on her fears, on her need for control. It was a difficult process, but she didn't give up. Tom and Sarah also went through a lot. They had to rebuild trust, learn to communicate openly and honestly. But their love turned out to be stronger than all the intrigues and manipulations. What are you thinking about? Alice asks, pulling me out of my thoughts. I smile. About how much has changed. And about how much has remained the same. She nods understandingly. Yes, we've been through a lot. But we're still a family. Many even stronger than before. At this moment, Veronica approaches us. She looks a bit uncertain, but I see sincerity in her eyes. Jack, Alice, I wanted to say again how sorry I am. For everything I did. Alice hugs her mother. Mom, we know. And we appreciate how hard you're working on yourself. I nod. Yes, Veronica. We see the changes. And we're proud of you. Veronica's eyes fill with tears. Thank you. For giving me a second chance. I know I didn't deserve it. Everyone deserves a second chance. I say, surprising myself. What's important is what we do with that chance. Veronica nods, wiping away tears. I promise I won't let you down again. We stand like this for a few moments, and I feel something changing in the air. As if the last piece of the puzzle has fallen into place. Hey, you there? Tom shouts. Are the burgers ready, or are we waiting until dinner? We all laugh, and the tension finally dissipates. The evening passes in a warm, family atmosphere. We eat, laugh, tell stories. Veronica shares her progress in the support group she started attending. Tom and Sarah discuss plans for the future. They decided to stay in town, finding a compromise between Sarah's career and the desire to be closer to family. As the sun begins to set, we all sit around the fire I've lit. Lisa asks for a scary story, and we all take turns making up the continuation of one story, laughing at the ridiculous plot twists. Looking at the faces of my loved ones, illuminated by the warm light of the fire, I feel a deep gratitude. We've been through darkness, but we've come out into the light. We faced the truth, no matter how painful it was, and we've become stronger. I know there are still many challenges ahead of us. Life is never simple. But now I'm confident whatever happens, we'll handle it. Because we're family. A real family, with all its complexities, conflicts, and love. Alice rests her head on my shoulder, and I hug her. Veronica smiles at us across the fire, and I see in her eyes not manipulation, but genuine love. Yes, we've been through a trial. We uncovered lies and manipulations. But in the process, we discovered the truth about ourselves, about our strength and our ability to forgive and grow. And this truth was worth all the trials. Did you like this story? Let us know in the comments what you liked. Subscribe to our storytelling podcast. Also, don't forget to like and ring the bell so you don't miss more interesting stories. See you soon.